Hi, I'm Mike Davis from the Outposts Business Development Team, and I'm here to talk about deploying fully managed applications anywhere you want to deploy them using AWS Outposts. And this is really targeted at developers with software vendors, people developing software that needs to go into different enterprises and different countries around the world, as well as developers who are developing standard software stacks that are going into, say, field teams and so forth. And the idea here is that software, the most disruptive force in software today is the SaaS-based deployment model, where you're delivering a fully managed service into your customers. And SaaS has really become the architecture of choice and the direction for a lot of our ISV partners at AWS. And this is playing out in a lot of the surveys that the analysts are doing. Okay, because it provides strong competitive differentiation, allows our partners to move faster, allows them to take advantage of the scale and the economic benefits and the services diversity of cloud services like AWS. And with AWS in particular, our SaaS partners are gaining competitive advantage in terms of how quickly they can move to market, how quickly they can launch new products 30 to 50% faster. Or addressing new markets that emerge for them, moving 69 to 77% faster in launches. And at the end of the day, there's a really strong payback period. We've seen this time and time again with the software providers that are delivering these value-added services using AWS regions. And so it's pretty unambiguous at this point that both the business model of SaaS and delivering fully managed services to customers and the use of the public cloud as the underlying mechanism to achieve that acceleration, those are super positive advantages for the software market. And so AWS is trying to keep up. We've continued to launch new regions. We have now 25 regions, and in those regions, we have 81 availability zones. And then in addition to the regions, we have a whole bunch of other points of presence for things like direct connect endpoints and cloud front content distribution networks. And we've even announced 5 new regions in Australia and UAE and India, Indonesia, Switzerland, Spain. And so we're continuing to scale our presence around the world. But we keep coming back and hearing from our customers that although our impressive public regions are where customers will always get the best scale and economics, we know our customers aren't able to move all their workloads immediately to our regions. This journey requires hybrid strategies, and we've been working backwards from our customer requirements to make sure AWS is really the best partner to support these strategies. Okay, and so what is the challenge then for an ISV partner whose goal is to deliver fully managed service offerings in the form of SaaS? Is that there are still markets where there are workloads sensitive to latency, where there are customers that are dictating data residency requirements or data sovereignty regulations that are restricting where data can land and persist. And then there are customers that we deal with every day, enterprise customers, that just require the deployment of these services on premises. And so these are traditional blockers to SaaS offerings that are hosted in AWS regions. Okay, so now with the emergence of some of the hybrid solutions we're going to talk about today, AWS allows you to deploy a fully managed software services offering anywhere you want to deploy it, including where AWS regions don't yet exist. Okay, so let's look a little bit at that portfolio and some of the solutions we've developed. We can really think of delivering cloud services in a continuum from the core of the network, that's the big AWS regions, to the edge where we have telco networks, where we have co-location partners, and even into the customer's data center in the right end of the spectrum, all the way out to where the customer's sitting. And some of the offerings that we include for edge are AWS Outposts, AWS Local Zones, and AWS Wavelength. And what's interesting, the way to think about local zones and wavelength is that these are services that are hosted by AWS. And if you peered into those local zones and those wavelengths, you would see systems that look like Outposts there. And so Outpost is really the platform that you get to control and get to deploy in any arbitrary location, whereas local zones and wavelengths are AWS hosted offerings. So they're all related to each other. Okay. Now, if we go all the way into the customer's data center, Outpost continues to be an option for you. And we have other services that we've developed along the way that support workloads like IoT, where there needs to be a capture and analytics of data out at the edge, or the Snowball family, which can operate in a completely disconnected environment, and it can be mobile, and it can be on ships and in airplanes and so forth. So depending on the workload, we have a variety of solutions that we've implemented, but the solution that we're really looking at here today that allows an ISV or a software development team to take a workload and deliver it in a fully managed offering all the way into the end customer's data center, that's AWS Outposts. Okay, so that's where the focus is. I'll give you a little bit of sort of cheat notes here on what we're talking about with Outposts. I actually showed a picture in my title slide that was an actual Outpost rack. And if you're going to be at reInvent this December and get one of those coveted slots, we'll actually have a rack on the show floor and you get to take a look at it. This is actually the same sheet metal and instance types and storage and services that we use in our AWS regions today. Think of it as taking a rack from one of those regions and putting it in any location that you specify. And so you get a lot of consistency in the infrastructure behavior, the instance types, and so forth. Now, Outpost is not just a hardware sale, and that's maybe one of the most important points of this offering that we have. It's a fully managed service. We are fully including the delivery, the installation, the ongoing monitoring and support of this infrastructure. So the end customer feels like it's a fully managed offering, just like EC2 and EBS are in AWS regions today. For all intents and purposes, there should be very little dependency on the customer's local IT support. Now, for the developer, though, the advantage is, hey, Outpost participates in an AWS region, leveraging the same API calls, the same control plane mechanisms, the same rigor to patching of firmware and software, and it uses all the same tools that you use in the AWS regions could be used with Outpost. So that principle of consistency is really guiding how we invest in the roadmap for Outposts. But before and I'll get back to Outposts, we'll talk a little bit about some of the details of how we configure and a system and the services that are supported in an Outpost. But I want to get to the feedback that we've received when our ISV partners can fully deliver a fully managed services offering into a country or into an enterprise end customer. And Outpost has now been in the market for over a year now, and we've talked to literally hundreds of software vendors who are providing us really strong signal that this is a powerful and potentially really competitively differentiated solution for them. And so here's what we're hearing from our ISV partners. Number one, always critical to our partners, finding new sources of revenue for them. And so being able to expand the footprint of a managed services offering by addressing demand in countries that are constrained by residency, for example, or winning enterprise contracts that demand that you deploy your IP on premises. Okay. The next principle is, how can we improve quality and governance of your services? Okay. Number one, we can reduce configuration skew. We can settle on a single defined infrastructure choice that reduces your requirements for regression testing. We have the ability here to eliminate the finger pointing that happens when the customer files a support ticket. Is the support ticket because the OS wasn't properly patched or updated? Was it because there's a hardware or a driver problem? Is there a VMware problem under the covers that you're having to help diagnose? Well, that all tends to go away when you're able to deliver in this kind of fixed AWS form factor that's optimized for your workload. Next, we hear that monitoring and software automation are really important benefits. The ability to know what's going on in real time and push software updates and remotely monitor and manage that infrastructure through your VPC connections, through that connectivity to the Outpost systems, and all Outposts do need to be connected to AWS regions. We'll talk about that. It improves the time to resolution for those support tickets. And then finally, and maybe one of the most important principles for some of our customers in areas like healthcare and financial services, the ability to have a single governance domain that spans AWS regions and your VPCs in our regions all the way down into the customer's data center. The same IAM access control, encryption key management, use of CloudTrail, the use of the same kind of templates and so forth, allow you to really harden that security and governance posture. And it eliminates that discontinuity between what you would deploy on premises and in an AWS region in, say, a hybrid model. All right. So let's talk about the benefits to developers. The ability to write once and run anywhere is really the goal that we have with this kind of solution. Can we develop a single code base that can run in regions or run in AWS Outposts or run between them with very little changes in that code base, using the same tool set for deployment, monitoring, managing, even accounting is super important and beneficial. And having a single developer learning path. So you don't have two teams anymore. The one team working on the legacy software that's running in Windows with SQL Server. Everyone gets to take advantage of EC2 and Linux and RDS databases and containers and so forth, using the same mechanisms and learning paths. And then finally, I would say one of the key points that to bring forward here is the idea of innovation. How can we accelerate innovation in your workloads? One thing we hear is containers adoption. There's a lot of developers that are working towards containers, and having services like ECS and EKS running directly in the customer's data center on an outpost is something that allows you to accelerate that adoption. Fully managed databases, especially the open source databases like MySQL and Postgres, are available in RDS running on Outposts. It's a great path to adopt machine learning, and machine learning is a good hybrid solution where you will do probably perform some activities in AWS regions like training models, but inference can be run at the edge where you can get very low latencies if you're analyzing data streams and so forth. And then finally, I would say in terms of innovation, thinking about hybrid topologies. How can you use AWS regions to complement what you're doing at the edge? And maybe that's a natural DR path. Maybe that's data protection. Maybe it's federating data across lots of sites in your end customers. Let's say they're factory operations with multiple sites or plants or refineries or healthcare providers with multiple locations. The ability to federate and to federate analytics is super valuable. The ability to archive is super valuable. You may be constrained by residency in some of these cases, but we're continuing to develop more and more of these sorts of architectures in partnership with our APN partners, and we're super enthusiastic about seeing some of the innovation here. And finally, and I know for some people, lowering costs may be the most critical thing in how they choose infrastructure and think about their roadmap. And we didn't develop Outposts to reduce hardware costs. It's a very dense, high performance infrastructure with lots of virtual CPUs and a small amount of space. It's very efficient hardware. But it's not necessarily there to take cost out of the hardware side. Now, if we look at the TCO, though, where we think about not paying for extra support contracts, and if the IT team doesn't have to do OS patching on a regular basis, how much money do we save there? Well, we really are in that ballpark compared to, say, hyperconverged infrastructure, or even do-it-yourself 3-tier architecture infrastructure, depending how the numbers stack up for you. What's important to remember is that with Outposts, and when you deploy in this fully managed services with this kind of infrastructure, all of the delivery, installation, and support is included. The infrastructure support is included all the way up through the hypervisor, okay? And this lessens a lot of the costs on your support and services and installation teams, your field techs. And even more importantly, it allows you to rinse and repeat as you scale. Once you've adopted this platform for running a fully managed offering, you can think about how you might replicate this in many places around the world. We're already seeing this in some of our partners, especially in kind of financial services transactions and healthcare. As we go into new sovereignty domains with them, the ability to have AWS stand up that infrastructure with our co-location partners, for example, and then all you have to do is launch your CloudFormation templates and you're up and running. So the marginal cost of deploying new infrastructure as you gain new customers becomes very, very low. So if you look at the overall picture in terms of the savings on cost of support, the low cost of scaling, the simplified tasks for your operations people, we think there's a tremendous amount of potential cost savings in deploying fully managed services on Outposts. And so this is, what I've described for you is kind of an aggregated set of feedback from our ISV partners who we've been working with over the last year. I want to drill a little bit deeper into Philips Healthcare specifically, and this is where Ted comes in. I'm glad Ted could join us today. Philips is one of the clearly leading healthcare providers. They literally touch millions of patients around the world. And they operate in almost every country out there. So, Ted, welcome to the show. And why don't you unmute? And I wanted to ask you some questions about what Philips is doing with the Outpost platform and where they see that going. Ted, are you with us?
I sure am.
Awesome. Okay. Welcome. So, now, Philips has a lot of businesses. We're obviously talking about healthcare here, but even within healthcare, they have a lot of different services and products. So tell us what part of Philips we've been working with.
Oh, thanks for the question, Mike. We've been working with a lot of parts of Philips, but primarily the Health Suite team has been the core group helping Philips move towards a fully managed SaaS offering. Health Suite, is a software foundation for running all of the Philips applications in the cloud. And the focus of the Health Suite is a consistent security, regulatory compliance, and operations for both single tenant and multi-tenant deployments. It's used by Philips internal businesses such as precision diagnosis, connected care, image-guided therapy, and personal health, as well as Philips external customers. Today, Health Suite operates from AWS regions around the globe, but naturally there's a lot of on-premise deployments still going on in healthcare. And that's what makes this interesting. Other than Health Suite running on AWS Outposts, we have support for Philips emergency care and resuscitation solutions. And there's also Philips TASI, which is an EMR for medical records. This is just the beginning though. We're working on a lot of other workloads that we can't talk about yet.
Yeah, I think I looked at their catalog at one point, and they have tens or even hundreds of different applications for all parts of healthcare. So yeah, I think it's an exciting opportunity for us and them as we think through some of these things. So what are the what are the drivers for them, and where are they deploying these systems now?
Yeah, so they're deploying Outposts for a couple specific use cases today. There's definitely services where customers are sensitive to latency, for example, in critical patient care. So here's where Outposts are deployed within medical facilities to provide those service levels required by their customers. The second use case is related to data residency. Philips literally has tens of thousands of customers in just about every country in the world. And a lot of those countries have regulatory constraints on where data needs to sit. Unfortunately, we don't have regions in some of those countries today, at least not yet. For countries with residency requirements, they're now able to deploy Health Suite on Outposts, typically in co-location sites, but sometimes on-prem. And that helps them expand their market for Health Suite and the other Philips SaaS offerings.
Okay, so you're getting into, so here's a win for them. What else are they telling us about the kind of the positive benefits of going down this path?
Yeah, so they really saw this as a chance to accelerate their move to SaaS globally, because now they have the option to deliver fully managed healthcare services where they couldn't deliver them before. And that's great competitive. That's a great competitive story for them. And the customer gets a better experience. Additionally, Outposts allow them to utilize the same tools and management Philips has come to enjoy with AWS, which eliminated the learning curve and allowed them to begin utilizing AWS Outposts on day one.
Interesting. Is there anything else they're saying about it?
One of the interesting things is that to control service quality with the traditional on-premise products, Philips has built up a sizable team of field techs that had to deal with hardware logistics. A lot of these servicings, even for software issues, required a truck roll. In this new model, AWS manages the infrastructure, and since Outpost operates as an extension of an AWS region, remote monitoring and software automation is easier. So they're telling us they expect to see a sizable reduction in servicing costs for these customers and sites. This takes a tremendous amount of heavy lifting off of Philips support organization, allowing them to continue to be laser focused on innovation and improving the delivery of healthcare services to over 3 billion people.
Excellent. And I want to get a little bit into the technical nuances of this. So I'm going to switch to this slide here and let you talk to it. But tell me what were the technical nuances here in terms of adopting the platform.
Yeah, so for anyone who's already working with AWS, using Outpost to host services is pretty straightforward. There are definitely some things we can do in our regions that can't be done in a single rack of compute and storage. For example, we have 200 services at this point running in our regions. And if a service doesn't exist yet on Outpost, then we have to decide if that latency to AWS region is a problem. So we work with development teams to really closely to understand this. For Health Suite and the other applications, there wasn't a lot of surgery required to qualify the platform. There's also no getting around the fact that Outposts go into data centers, and we have to make sure that proper power, airflow, and networking all meet our specs, but there's nothing exotic there.
Okay. I hear there are a couple of models of implementation that they have in mind. Are the outposts all going into hospital data centers?
Yes, there are two models that Philips utilizes when deploying an AWS Outposts. These include deploying into colocation sites in regions where data residency is required and or for multi-tenant applications. Secondly, there are a lot of large medical facilities that require on-premise deployments for latency or security reasons. And this includes deployments with multiple Philips workloads, which makes this a little like a Philips private cloud running directly in a provider's data center.
Interesting. So I imagine in a large enough location, if they're going into co-location, that could be a kind of a sizable mini region for them. That's interesting. Now, but you mentioned data residencies being one of the important drivers here. But we also said outposts are connected to AWS regions. So how does that work?
Yeah, so data residency does present challenges for cloud-based applications, especially when an AWS region does not exist in these countries. AWS Outposts can definitely support these requirements. However, Outposts do need to be connected to an AWS region. The Outpost management orchestration and service plane resides within an AWS region. The beauty, however, is that the patient data and medical information stay on an Outpost, and only the management and monitoring of an Outpost and its services are done from an AWS region. So the connected nature of an Outpost has not been a concern for healthcare providers since they know where the data is at all times.
Okay, excellent. So just wrapping up, clearly this is not just about new and better hardware for Philips. Is that right?
It's certainly not just about the hardware. For Philips, the ability to use the same management tools, controls, and existing health suite platform, regardless of where they're deploying, really was a key factor in deciding to go with an AWS Outpost. Not having to maintain, support, and manage the hardware was another key factor. And then the ability to provide remote automation and monitoring while offloading the infrastructure management to AWS should really reduce their servicing costs. We hope going forward, that Outpost is really going to be viewed as a standard deployment platform for all on-premise Philips healthcare workloads.
Okay. One last thing. We announced last reInvent, Andy Jassy was on stage. We talked about a new set of form factors coming for Outposts, and we're still on track to deliver those pretty soon here. Since you're one of our healthcare experts, what role do you see for the smaller form factor Outposts in this industry?
Yeah, definitely. The new form factors are very exciting for the healthcare and life sciences segment. Medical facilities and healthcare workloads come in all sizes, and a lot of clinics, for example, don't have data centers. This would give customers like Philips the ability to deploy their application and services, and a smaller scale workload to locations otherwise not supported or have the ability to support a 42U rack.
All right. Well, thanks for your insight on Philips and what they're doing with Outposts. We're looking forward to kind of continued global expansion. I think there's just really exciting opportunity on both sides there. So thank you, Ted, and we'll see you at reInvent.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Just to wrap up, I did promise I'd give some more details on Outposts and some of the processes that our partners are going through to get started with Outposts. So a few more details on the system itself. So this is the 42U cabinet version of Outposts, and we build these to your specifications. They are built with the same AWS Nitro hypervisor system, and that includes some really interesting security features, including the cryptographic shredding of data when we do repairs on the system and have to take a FRU back with us. The instance types are standard instance types that you find in the regions today. So M5, C5, R5, GPU instance types. The basic storage platforms, EBS block storage and S3 object storage are available in Outposts, as well as other value-added services. So RDS, as I mentioned already, but also EMR for analytics, our container services, ALB for load balancing, and there's many more services we're working on. It's worth pointing out, though, that any application running in an Outpost still has access to all 200 AWS services, but some will be accessed over the service link connection back to AWS regions, and that's where, as Ted mentioned, we'll work with developers to understand if that's a problem or not. The 1U and 2U form factors have been announced and should be available later this year. And but we've been shipping that 42U cabinet since we launched almost 2 years ago. So it's exciting. And what's important about Outpost and the basic principle of the design is consistency in management and making it look and feel like a fully managed service offering to our customers. Okay, so Outposts are tethered to an AWS region for the control plane. And this was an architectural decision to make sure that those API calls are absolutely consistent and that you get to leverage the same tools like IAM and KMS, VPC networking, and so forth. This also means that Outpost must be connected to a region. If you have a customer that needs to operate in a vault with no network connectivity to the outside world, well, that's really going to be a better fit for our Snowball offering, which is an increasingly capable compute platform since we launched it years and years ago. We are adding in Outpost the ability to network into the customer's local area network, which we have to support, and that service is called the local gateway, which provides BGP routing and IP address management. And you get to use all the same tool sets, though. So if you're a Terraform user, Terraform works great with Outposts. And then finally, I'll clarify that most of the Outpost systems we ship today are built to meet your requirements in terms of both the configuration, that would be the instance selection and the storage types, as well as in sizing, small, medium, large. And by the way, Outpost is a logical thing, right? So we can put multiple racks together into a single logical outpost, or we can deliver multiple Outpost racks as isolated outposts. And we have both things happening, especially customers that might want to implement an HA architecture between two data centers. That would be a good example of two discrete outposts. AWS builds, installs, activates the system, all using AWS badged employees. So we want to turn over the keys to yourselves or to the customer. And from their perspective, it feels like a fully managed service offering. We are monitoring the system. We would advise the customer in case hardware needs to be fixed, and so forth. We are delivering today in over 60 different countries. And one of the things that we've invested in is a set of partnerships with a lot of our co-location partners. As we deploy more and more into co-location on behalf of our software partners and our enterprise customers, we're taking that opportunity to kind of pre-qualify and make sure those co-location partners have a tight linkage with AWS. All right, so how to get started, or the patterns that we see with a lot of our ISV partners in using AWS Outposts. Number one, the first step is to look at validating your applications with Outposts. And we can bring experts like Ted or Outpost specialists in to support application discussions. We have a network of labs that are available to you if you would like to bring in your application. And that's really a place for validating kind of the last mile of validation with Outposts. A lot of the test and dev and benchmarking work can be done in AWS regions. Like we said, it's the same instance type, storage, and so forth. And we've created a program called the Outpost Ready program, which recognizes your investments in the platform. So we have an Outpost Partners page. We would like to have your solution figured there prominently once you get through basic testing and validation. And that's a program that's available through your partner managers. Next is starting to identify the pilot opportunities and the early customer adopters. Some will already have Outposts, and they'll be asking your teams whether or not your software is supported, and we'll work together to make sure that that goes well for the customers. And then ultimately, the way to scale and really take advantage of the benefits of this fully managed infrastructure offering that you could take anywhere in the world is to treat it as part of your product. And we have lots of our partners, as I mentioned, thinking of this platform almost as an appliance that they can rinse and repeat and deploy anywhere they want quickly and easily and at low cost. And that allows them to scale their revenue and go into new markets. Some of the other programs that you should be aware of that will help you on your journey to SaaS and migrating ISV workloads to AWS are number one, the ISV Workloads Migration Program, where we work with consulting partners and provide incentives to make that an easy path to bring legacy workloads to AWS. We have a team of experts called the SaaS Factory that are mainly focused on all the best practices of developing multi-tenant and efficiently operated SaaS offerings from AWS regions. And now that Outpost is an optional platform to deploying out to the edge or into customer data centers, they're able to help you, guide you on that platform adoption. We also have SaaS competency consulting partners, and we have our own professional services teams who've done a lot of work in helping managed services partners deploy in Outposts. And then finally, SaaS Boost, I'm including that for completeness, just so people are aware of it. This is an open source multi-tenancy framework that we've developed to help accelerate the modernization of SaaS applications. And these are all different programs generally available through our APN, Amazon Partner Network mechanisms. So just to wrap up, I appreciate your time. And I want you to take away some key points associated with the idea of SaaS on-prem. And when we say SaaS on-prem, what we really mean is a fully managed services offering where there's very little dependency on the customer's IT team to provision hardware, to maintain it, to pay any attention to that infrastructure, which is fully managed by AWS up through the hypervisor. And then you get to focus on delivering value-added and differentiated services from the hypervisor up through the user interface. leveraging the same AWS native mechanisms that you use today when you operate in our regions. Okay. This allows you to respond to new revenue opportunities and solve for problems of latency, data sovereignty regulations, or just contractual constraints and conservative end customers. Deploying on fully managed infrastructure like AWS Outposts reduces variability in the field. That means your regression testing and the configuration skew that you have to deal with is greatly diminished, and therefore your service quality improves. It simplifies the governance and security by maintaining a single consistent envelope between AWS regions and on-prem. And it provides a platform for modernization for your developers to start accelerating and creating more competitive distance over the other players in your field. And then finally, we have programs and partnerships that are available to help accelerate and improve your participation in this model. So I appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to open up the chat for Q&A. We're happy to take questions along the way. And along the way, hopefully we've been able to provide you some of the links to these resources where you can follow up. Thanks a lot. Over and out.